So another common mistake that some people usually do is basically letting insignificant parties know about your asset protection plan, or insignificant parties. Sometimes, even though your neighbors are really good friends, you want to make sure that there are certain things that other people don't know. You're trying to protect your business. You want to protect your assets. You don't want people to know what your plan is. You don't want people to know your escape route. You don't want to know where things are hidden if you try to do that. So you want to make sure that only certain people who need to know your asset protection plan know about it. And if you want to venture into telling your neighbor, and if you trust them, and if they happen to be your business partner, that's okay. So that's just an example. Another example that might be very helpful for the upcoming rental property gurus and real estate investors is to make sure that the tenants of these properties don't know who you are, meaning you, the owner. Sometimes it makes sense to hire someone to collect the rent, to hire someone once a month to go and maintain the properties, or to basically communicate with the tenants. That way, if anything was to happen, they don't have direct access to the owner, and it makes it a little bit more harder for them. And this isn't something where it's going to prevent lawsuits, but it definitely deters them. It slows them down. It's more. And once again, we go back to the original example. People are looking, just deciding whether or not it's worth their time and effort to file a lawsuit sometimes. So these are all things that you can do to basically protect yourself. Another thing you should always look out for is using the business name when you're out in your business. And that ties in with the separation between business and personal. It isn't to say that when you introduce yourself to clients, or when you introduce yourself to prospective clients, that you use your business name. This is the tax book. You don't use your name. You can let them know that you represent the company, but they don't always have to know that you own it. So that's one of the things you can use to basically protect yourself. Another thing you want to look into is hiring people to work for you, and making sure that certain parties don't know the actual hierarchy of your business. Remember, the hierarchy of your business is basically between you and your lawyers and your accountants even. But for outside parties, unless they really need to, they shouldn't know about it. That way it's harder for them to find the owner. And if something was to happen, if it was really important, then they'll look for you. We don't want little things coming to the owner of the business. So, in conclusion, what does this mean for me? First off, most of you have probably heard a lot of basically advice about asset protection, and sometimes things could get pretty confusing. So this is the reason why we've laid out the basics, laid out the groundwork for you, and make sure you know that you're on a good track. That most of you have already started your businesses. You've already started the first step of separating yourself from your business operations. So you're in good shape so far. Multiple entities. Most people starting off sometimes think too far ahead. They're just starting off, and sometimes they want to have 10, 20 different business entities. It's not for everyone. It's always remember that there's just some simple things you can do that we discussed before to protect yourself. You don't always have to have elaborate protection plans. You don't have to have elaborate structures. You can keep things simple, keep things to the basics, and hopefully you can bring that with you as your business grows in the future. Because when you keep things simple, chances are your taxes will be simpler, and also the amount of cost for maintaining these entities will be lower. People usually forget that you want to create all these different entities. You also have to look at whether or not the timing is right, whether the finances are there to do such entities, and whether or not there's a real demand for it at this point. You also have to evaluate your level of risk. what are your chances of being sued? What are your chances of having liability reach your doorstep? What are you working on? Are you working on selling plush bears? What are the chances of liability rising from that? What line of business are you in? Are you giving advice? Should you have liability protection for that? Should you have liability protection if you're dealing with multiple properties? Probably yes. But if you're doing something relatively safe, should you go and get asset protection and gear up to the point where you're buying two liability protection policies? You have to decide that on your own. But of course, in the practical sense, like I said, you definitely have to look at your finances and whether or not it's practical. Some other simple tips, usually after you evaluate the level of risk from your personal level and the business level, you might want to group them a certain way. Another practice I see some clients do is group the high risk items away from the low risk items. Sometimes you can group the more valuable quote unquote items away from the less valuable items. So those are things that should also be considered when putting together your asset protection and putting it in place. Basically, you also want to make sure you communicate with the experts. Asset protection and taxes don't always come hand in hand. The best asset protection plan might not yield the best tax ramifications, and the best tax treatment might not yield the best asset protection. So the key to most people is to find the proper harmony between that, and of course, harmony between that and your whether or not it's needed, and basically the proper funding for it at this point, especially for new business owners such as yourselves. Some other professionals you should definitely communicate on a very constant basis. Our investment professionals, your coaches, your mentors. You should always keep an open line of communication, especially if you have any type of questions. Now, if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to call us. And that's basically the whole entire presentation. I'll be opening the floor up for questions, so just give me 1 second. Be opening that. I hope you guys found that helpful. You'll be able to use this in your future business career. Feel free. I've now opened the question and answer panel. You can start typing in your questions, and I will answer the first